Hello, welcome back. Today it's all about making monsters, creating monsters of your own, and we're going to look at a clockwork kind of monster, Modron. And of course, what I've been doing a lot is working very much through Shadowdark, because I want you to be able to make your own monsters, do your own thing, and so that's what we're going to do today. I'm going to put up a poll so that you can take part in that poll if you want to. I suggest grabbing some food, some drink, making sure you're comfortable, and we'll get into this as quickly as we possibly can and make a Modron for your Shadowdark game so that you can include it in your game if you want to. Okay, so get that food and drink, get comfortable, and get your ideas flying, and we'll do this fairly quickly. We'll get this done and move on. You can get on with your day, and I'll get on with my day. Yeah? All right. Hi, welcome to How to RPG. My name is Fred Wheeler, and today I want to talk about tabletop role-playing games, and the game that I've selected is a version of Dungeons & Dragons. It's called Shadowdark. Shadowdark is really sort of its own animal. It's referred to as being sort of a simple version of 5e or an OSR game, old school essentials or revival. I don't really think that it's any of those. I think it's a combination of all sorts of things that seem to work well together, which is one of the reasons why I like this. And we're going to focus on making a Modron. Now, there are different types of Modrons. I've decided to simply stick with the basic Modron for Shadowdark, and I'm going to go through the process of how you'd go about building that and making that for your game. Okay, one of the things I would like to point out is I've, with the help of AJ Pickett and myself, we are working towards making a monster book for Shadowdark. It'll take us a while. We'll get there. I'm working away. He's doing another project right now, but he will come back to the art side of it and the monster creation idea. But until then, I'll just keep plugging away at the conventional D&D monsters that you're familiar with until then. And when he's ready, we'll work back into the original stuff. Both myself, AJ Pickett, Mitchell Reed, Wally DM, and my brother David Bailey we created a book. It's 10 classes, 17 ancestries, which you can get off DriveThru RPG. Down in the description, you'll find a link. Pay what you want. You can pay $0. You can pay some money if you want to contribute. That would be great, but you don't have to. But go try it out. Go try out those playable options. Just see what they're like. See if they fit you, or maybe you need to make some adjustments. You never know. I really want people to play with the things that we have made to see how they feel about them. Okay? So my first question before I start showing you my Google document and how I would go about doing this is I usually ask you how you would go about making a Modron. So that is my question. Hashtag, how would you build the Modron for Shadowdark? Okay, and there might be some key things that you think need to be included, or some key things that are unimportant and that can be ignored. So I'm going to ask that question. I'm going to come back and have a look, but I'm going to show you how I've kind of built it so far, and then we'll go from there. I think that's a good place to start, right? Okay, so first off, here is my Google document, which I actually probably should update. This is probably draft 10 actually, and today is the 2nd of July in New Zealand, so the 2nd of July. So we'll just update that. So forget about all of the monster lore stuff, because I'll come back to that some other time. Let's get down to the actual stat block. Modron, I'm going with a monodrone, which I'm going to call a clockwork, because I believe Modron is an IP name, therefore we could not use that, so we're just going to call it a clockwork. You could call it something else. If you come up with a different name you think would work, then throw it in the chat, let us know. So what is it? It is a metal sphere with two arms, legs, wings, and a face with a single eye. It's pretty simple. First sentence communicates pretty much everything you need to know. Yep. These mechanical robots live to bring order to the universe. That's it. So we've got most of what we need. Now, what I normally do is I look at AD&D to decide what the monster level should be. So what this monster level should be, that's what I usually use as my goal point. The problem is that finding Modron as an AD&D monster has proven to be a little bit difficult. So I've gone back to the 5e Monster Manual, since that does actually have the Modron in it. And I was looking through 4 and I could not find the Modron there either. And it's listed as a quarter challenge rating. For me, that means it's level 1. I don't think there's any point whatsoever in creating a monster that has got a level of 0. You can do that, but I don't see any point whatsoever. Waste of your time. Just move on. That would be my advice. They're generally a lawful thing, so they operate by law, so the alignment is under law. So that was nice and easy. So I've got the key things that I need to start off with. Now, all I do is I transfer over from 5e the armor class. Armor class was a 15, and I was like, okay, armor class 15, quite high, but there's a table that I make available on my Patreon for the free tier that you can download. It's pinned at the top so you can find it easily. And I've got one for creating 5e monsters as well, or 2025 monsters. It should be able to do both. And this table here is for Shadowdark. So monster level 1. So an armor class of anything between a 7 and a 15 is acceptable. So 15 would be the top end for a monster level of 1 in Shadowdark. So we're not outside of that realm. It is made of metal, so that I'm not against the idea. That kind of makes sense that its armor class is quite high. So that's doable. We can live with that. That's right. Next, we're going to do our hit points. Our hit points are nice and easy to determine, but we'll come back to that because we have to make sure we get our stats right. So let's go straight over to movement and then we'll do the stats. Under movement, I've got near and fly. And the reason is that in the 5e version or stat block, it moves 30 feet. And near is anything that's slightly more than 5 feet up to 30 feet. So near is the perfect distance, but it also flies. So we've added in a bracket with fly. And there we go. We've got our movement sorted out. As for the stats for this monster, nice and simple. We just break it down, look at what we've got in our 5e stat block, and then we make any adjustments we feel would be useful or necessary based on the fact that, monsters still have a very wide range that you can work with them with your ability scores or your ability modifiers or your stats, whatever you want to call it. But we still want to sit within that range if we can for our level 1 monster, right? So strength 10, which is a 0, so that's what we've got for strength is 0. Dexterity is a 13 here in the 5e stat block, so that's a +1, so we're going to transfer +1 over. That's all we need to know. Constitution is a 12, so that's a +1 as well, okay? And then it's got an intelligence that is not high because this is sort of the lowest form of the Modron. And we're making basically a monodrone. And it's got here 4 is its intelligence, so that's like a -3. That's fine, we'll put that down. Its wisdom is what is pretty average, so it's not good wisdom, but it's not bad wisdom. So it's got a 10, which is a 0, so that's what we put down into a stat block. And then we've got charisma being a 5, which comes out as a -3. So our minuses are all in our intelligence and our charisma, which is fine. I don't think any of those things will necessarily need to be changed, because if we look at our table and our level 1 monster and we go over to what is the bottom end and the top end for a level 1 monster in Shadowdark, well, generally the lowest end for your modifier is a -4. We've got a -3, so we're all good. We're within those parameters. Nothing's higher than a +3 though. And you'll notice nothing is higher than a +3 with this monster. It's not a high-end monster, okay? Its purpose is very different. So we're all good. So we can stay with that. The next thing we need to deal with is, now that we've got our Constitution modifier, we can now determine its hit points. Hit points are determined very easily. It's an 8-sided dice, a D8. We take the average, which is 4.5. We multiply it by the monster level, which is the Constitution modifier. So we multiply it by the monster level. So 1 plus 4.5 is 4.5, right? So that the monster level is 1. And then we're going to add our Constitution modifier. Well, our Constitution modifier is a grand total of 1. It's a 1. So that means we get 5.5. Well, we don't round up, we round down, so it becomes a hit point of 5. So our hit points are determined. We know exactly what we're doing here. That's good news. Okay. We've done that aspect. Let's move on to our attack roll. Now, what do they usually use for an attack? Well, generally they have a dagger. You could say it's a sword, but it's basically a dagger. It's a small thing. They're not particularly large. I mean, they're classified as being they're classified as being something that is a medium-sized creature. But the 5e stat block lists as a dagger and a javelin. Now we could change those weapons out. We could change the dagger to a short sword if we wanted to. That would be fine. I've gone with the dagger and the javelin. And since I know what the damage for those are, we want to see to make sure that they fit within the parameters of a level 1 monster, right? So let's look at the damage that our dagger does. Our dagger in Shadowdark does 1d4. And the javelin also does a 1d4. Is that going to fit with the monster damage we need to be doing? So level 1 monster, anywhere between a d4 and a d6. Perfect. But there is room, like I said, to shuffle out the dagger and put in a short sword if you wanted to. Yeah. So we're going to stick with the dagger, and they're both doing 1d4. Now we need to talk about like how much is the attack bonus going to be. Normally, and I state this almost every single time, is that the range for the attack bonus in Shadowdark can be quite broad. But in this case, I don't think we want to get too silly, right? Anywhere between a 0 and a 2. So either your attack bonus is equal to your monster level, or it's either 1 point up or 1 point down. I think that is the best way to approach it. It's not always the case. That can vary quite a lot depending on what you're dealing with. Is that good monster design? So far it seems to have been all right, I've found, generally. But I think the best monsters are the ones that have an attack bonus that's close to their monster level. So let's look at what we have here. Let's consider that our dagger is probably a finesse weapon, and our javelin is a weapon that you would normally throw, right? It's a throw-in weapon. So you get to throw that at somebody, but you can also use it up close. So we need to start thinking very carefully about some of the bonuses that we give for this monster. Do we think that this is a monster that's really good at attacking and fighting? And I generally don't think that it is. I think it's fairly sort of average, so we don't think that we need to give it really good numbers. A dagger is a finesse weapon. You can use your strength modifier or your dex modifier. So our strength is 0 and our dex is 1, so I think we should just go with dagger being a 1. Okay. Next is our javelin. Now, a javelin is a little bit tricky, because if you're going to use the javelin at close quarters, which you could, but why would you? You might as well throw it. So what I think we should do is I think we should build it not so much for being up close, but for at range. Now, I put down +1. And the reason I did this, so you get to either do a dagger attack or you get a javelin to throw. That's it. I reckon what we do is we make it so that it's not that good. Like, we don't want to make it so good that it's sort of the go-to is always to throw. And we want the dagger to also be a thing. They can fly, so they should be able to get to you reasonably easy. It shouldn't be too difficult, right? So we can build this around that concept. For those of you who are wondering what I started off with the Modron, I started off with a goblin stat block. Okay, so the goblin stat block is actually a really good place to start, particularly for like a monster of level 1, because goblins are 1 in terms of their stats, but they have a short bow, so we're going to have to deal with a javelin. And javelins, usually when you throw a javelin, you're going to be using strength. Okay, not dexterity, because you don't use dexterity for a throw-in weapon, you use strength. Okay, so we could make this a 0. It could be just based on strength, no bonus. Or we could go +1 and say they're good at throwing it. So I put down +1 just to keep it nice and simple. But we can actually go down and say, okay, given it's the throw-in weapon, because they're not particularly good at using javelins or daggers, that's not really, they're not highly... they're not combat machines, really. What we can do is we can just go, make that a 0. and that will be fine. It's only 1 point lower than its monster level. It's not a huge deal. It won't have a huge effect and undermine your game that much at all. In fact, it's probably going to be a better choice, right? And it falls in line with the core rules of Shadowdark, which is, you stick with the general core mechanics, and you don't really have exceptions. This isn't a game that has lots of exceptions to the rule, which is great. It's nice when you don't have to deal with that sort of nonsense. Okay, now what I did here is I sat down and I thought, okay, so we've got a Modron. We have to give it something else, because right now all it does is use a dagger and it's got a javelin. That's it, and it flies. So there's not much else going on. All the rest is narrative and story-based that you might be using. So what does it have? Well, it's got a thing called True Sight. So True Sight, basically, it can see through illusions, which is quite interesting. I did not include this, but we could include True Sight. Like, that would be an interesting addition. It also has another feature in 5e where it says disintegrate. So when you destroy it, it disintegrates, it turns to dust. We don't have to include that as a feature. It's not really that important. The True Sight might be a good thing to include, though. The fact that it can see through illusions. It can see invisible creatures. It can see through illusions. That's actually quite an interesting idea. There's another feature it has, which is its mind feature, the axiomatic mind. So the Modron can't be compelled to act in a manner contrary to its nature or its instructions. So I put down can't be charmed or mind controlled. And why did I do that? Because I could have written down something that's just shorter than what they've got in the 5e and said can't be compelled to act against its instructions. Now maybe I can still do that. Yeah, so I could write that like that, or we could keep it with no, it just can't be charmed, just can't be mind controlled. This just keeps it nice and simple. Can't be forced to act against its programmed instructions. So we could use either one of these. I think this one is probably a better way to go, just because it cleans up a lot of problems that the game master would have to contend with players. Because now you say, okay, you can't mind control it and you can't charm it. You're not going to be able to find some, contrived way to force it to do something that's against its programming. Whereas this is very, very difficult to enforce. Even though it's very much like the 5e sentence there, it's hard to enforce this. Like, it's hard to sort of what does that relate to? It's always going to be around charmed and being mind controlled. So let's just eliminate that completely. That's why I put it there. Yeah. Right. Let's do the True Sight. True Sight, and we'll write this as can see invisible now I could say invisible creatures, or what about invisible things? Invisible things and illusions. And that pretty much covers everything that True Sight does in 5e. Again, the question is that actually going back to how the AD&D or the older version of the Modron, the original Modron, was working? I'm not completely sure, but if I look at the monster manual for 5e and I look at sort of how True Sight works, it says a monster with True Sight can, out to a specific range. We won't worry about range. Don't worry about the range. I think that its range is as far as it can see. Like, that's it. See in normal magical darkness, see invisible creatures, so it can see in darkness as well. Well, all monsters are dark adept, so they can see in darkness. It says magical darkness, and I honestly, I wouldn't worry too much about that. See invisible creatures and objects, automatically detect visual illusions and succeed on saving throws against them, blah, blah, blah. We're not worrying about saving throws. We're not going to worry about any of that. We're just going to say it can see and illusions. Okay, so it can see invisible creatures and detect illusions. So you're not going to trick it with an illusion. And that there would give us our Modron in its basic form. That's how I would do it. It's not that difficult. Let's go over to chat and see what people have had to say, because I'm sure there's somebody in chat who is a bit more familiar with the older version of the Modron who might be like, there's a couple of things you might want to consider adding in, so we'll have a look. And there isn't. It's very quiet today. Okay, that's right. So are you interested in the Shadowdark RPG? And we've got here, yes, 67%, undecided 33%. I'm going to keep working on this. We'll see how we go. All right, I'm going to end that poll. 3 votes. Those of you who are here, I do appreciate that you did actually vote. That's great. Thank you very much. Nobody has any feedback. I'm going to end it there. I'm going to say, okay, we're done. I will be back next week. I believe we're doing the half dragon, which I'm going to call the dragon blood. That's sort of my intention. I'm going to keep making Shadowdark monsters for a while. Tomorrow, what is happening tomorrow? Tomorrow's live stream is all about trying to fix the species or races for Dungeons and Dragons 2024 or 5e, but mostly for 2024, that version of D&D. I'm going to try and do a few of them, not just one, and try and fix as much as I possibly can. So that is the intention of tomorrow's live stream. And then we will probably wind up going in a different direction. There might be a couple other things I need to clean up with 2024 or 2025, whatever you want to call it, the week after that. But then we're going to start showing you how to make classes, or start making classes, since I've made 10 so far. And I have been play testing them, by the way. We're going to start doing the Shadowdark classes. Now, why am I doing the Shadowdark classes and not working through the enormous mess that is 2024 classes? The reason is I don't see that anybody has figured out a solution to sort out that goddamn mess. Okay, so what I have discovered is that by making Shadowdark classes, a lot of the solutions and answers present possibilities for fixing the problem of modern D&D. And because there is a lot of problems with it. So we're going to work on a lot of 2024, 2025 for a couple more weeks, and then I'm going to come over to Shadowdark, and then we're going to go back to modern D&D and try and clean it up and fix some of the things you might be having problems with. Okay, so that is my intention. Should be an interesting process, frankly. Anyway, huge thank you to everybody who's been watching and listening. Thank you for taking part in the poll if you did. Huge thank you to all of my patrons who support me on Patreon. Please, it's really good if it's nice when people join as a free member, but it's actually much better when people join as a paid member. You don't have to pay much, because it means that I can keep doing this. And really, it actually gets really expensive to do this sort of thing. And I think a lot of people sort of forget that YouTube is not cheap anymore to run a channel for. It just doesn't work that way. So I really do thank all the people on Patreon who do so. I'll put this up onto Patreon. We'll be back again next week to do another one. So look, wherever you are in the world, whether it be the morning, the afternoon, or the night, please look after yourself, your family, and your friends. Be nice to your neighbours. And hey, till next time, keep rolling those 20s.